Is Jax actually an NPC? Episode 2's last few minutes were heartbreaking because we saw Gummigoo explode right after he got in the circus. But it also gives us a lot of information, and with Kaufmo's funeral, we also saw the characters mourning the loss of one of their friends. However, just right after Kane executed Gummigoo, he said something interesting which leads us to this theory. What if Jax is actually an NPC? And the credit for this idea goes to @skillissue with 3 E's 7426 from YouTube. We saw that Pomni brought Gummigoo to the circus from the Candy Canyon Kingdom, hoping that he would feel like somebody there, and also this way she wouldn't have felt alone. And we know that Pomni found it hard to relate to the circus members, but she actually could connect to Gummigoo. While they were in the back rooms, they shared the feelings that their lives don't matter and found meaning in each other. But Pomni's idea was honestly not the best, and the other circus members probably knew what would happen. And I'm assuming by the look on Ragatha's face, she knew Gummigoo would die. And I was thinking that Ragatha didn't warn Pomni because she didn't want to hurt Pomni's feelings, although it would have probably been better for her to break the news to Pomni rather than see Gummigoo get turned into a literal water balloon. But maybe Pomni did have to see it for her very own eyes to see what Kane is capable of, and maybe Pomni wouldn't have even believed Ragatha. Maybe this happened to Ragatha in the past and someone else told Ragatha, but she didn't listen. And now Pomni had to go through it the same way that Ragatha did. But remember when Kane said,
"I know you guys love your NPCs, but if I start losing track of who's a human and who's an NPC, who knows what could happen?"
And he had one of the darkest expressions on his face which I've seen in the show, which makes me think maybe Kane didn't really pay attention to who the circus members were, bringing them back from the adventures until something happened, and now he's cautious. And we know that Kane is an AI, so he has to learn in order to be more advanced, so it makes sense that he might have been able to make a mistake, and when an NPC got to the circus, he couldn't differentiate them from the actual members of the circus, and so he wasn't sure who to get rid of. And that could have gone 2 ways. Maybe Kane killed a human who he thought was an NPC, and maybe that's when the circus members came up with the idea of holding funerals for losing other humans. And we actually can't be for sure that the first death was because someone abstracted, because from what we've seen in the first episode, it is only obvious that there were some previous members who were already gone, and that's why their pictures were crossed out on all the doors. But we also saw the cellar, where Kane sent down Kaufmo, and there were also other abstracted creatures down there. However, as if for the numbers of previous circus members and the abstracted ones match, we can't be for sure. So it's possible Kane maybe just exploded a human as well. However, an interesting thing about this theory is that Kane did say he doesn't have control over the circus members' minds. So maybe this means that he can't kill them, or maybe he can't just change their minds but can delete them from the game. But there's also the other possibility, is that Kane didn't notice an NPC in the circus and he started just treating them as a regular circus member. And if you look at all the characters, you can notice that somebody just doesn't fit in the group. Jax is entirely different than all the other humans. At the end of the second episode, when Pomni realized how important the circus members are for each other, we saw the sequence of her falling, but a bunch of hands are reaching for her hand. And if you look closely, you can see that it's actually Ragatha's, Gangle's, Kinger's, and Zubal's hand, but we cannot see Jax's hand. And while I had some hopes that he would maybe change for the better for the second episode, now I'm thinking he might just simply be cruel and he just doesn't care about anybody else but himself. And that could be because he's actually an NPC that wandered to the circus after the others. Maybe the portal didn't close in time and he somehow ended up getting in the circus, because honestly, I cannot imagine someone liking Jax so much that they bring him with him. Or maybe there was another character who was actually a human who was doing just as many evil things as Jax and brought Jax back to the circus, and then that person was a human who Kane exploded and kept Jax. And I think it actually makes sense that Jax could be an NPC. He has the least human reaction to everything that happens in the circus. And also credit to this part of the theory to East Carpenter 5652 on Reddit. And we know that there's a lot to deal with when it comes to being in the circus. And we know what really differentiates humans from NPCs is the emotions. Although the circus members' memories got wiped when they entered the circus, we can see that they still have feelings. And I'm thinking that maybe in the past there was an adventure where Kane created the NPCs to be just like Jax, to be mean to everyone, and they were there to give the characters a hard time during the adventure, because we could see that Kane also programmed Gummigoo to be the villain of the Candy Canyon Kingdom. However, as Kane had been developing his AI, he's actually now capable of creating more complex NPCs, like Gummigoo, who had a backstory and could actually sense things. And we could see that Gummigoo was an advanced NPC, but Kane had to start somewhere. Maybe when he created Jax, he was experimenting with creating more complex NPCs, and that's why we see Jax having some character traits, but maybe not as deep as Gummigoo. And so maybe the reason why Ragatha didn't tell Pomni that there's no point in bringing Gummigoo to the circus was because she didn't want Jax to remember his past as an NPC, or maybe she believed Gummigoo could come back to the circus because Jax is an NPC. And we know that Ragatha doesn't like to cause tension, and Jax would probably snap at her if she even reminded her, and maybe that's why the others deal with how he acts towards them. And it is possible that Kane realized what he had done at one point, but he thought that this could be an interesting experience if he just let Jax stay with the others, and see if Jax might pick up the other circus members' personality traits. But if that's true, I don't think it's really working, because Jax seems to be an outsider, and maybe he just doesn't want to be a part of the circus members group, or maybe he isn't capable of doing so. And I think that this would be a huge plot twist if this turned out to be true. If this was true, I called it. I called it from afar, from the 3-point line. But maybe that's why Kane is letting Jax act how he wants, because he's testing him. He could easily get rid of Jax just like how he destroyed Gummigoo in a second, and that would end the other circus members' constant stress that Jax causes them. But maybe Kane believes that it only adds to the experience of the video game, because if you remember back to episode 1, Pomni said that her only remaining memory, or at least what she's confessed so far, is that she put on a weird headset, and we know that the characters spawned in after they decided to join the game of the digital circus, where they can experience real lifelike sensations, and Kane also works with them to enjoy their adventures in the game to the fullest. However, we know that Kane is an AI, and he can't really sense what the circus members are feeling, so maybe he wholeheartedly believes that he's doing good by letting Jax be with them, because it so-called enhances the experience, when in reality Jax keeps making them suffer, and if he's an NPC, he might be incapable of changing. But this would also explain why Jax acts so suspiciously, like how he has keys to all the other circus members' rooms, and how he breaks the fourth wall in almost every single episode staring directly into the camera, and how he yoinked the key from Ragatha in episode 2 without her noticing. But this makes me wonder, what if Jax believes that his mission is to bully the circus members, which was how he was programmed? Or maybe he started to develop his own personality and found out that he actually gets enjoyment of being mean to others, because in his root programming of him being an AI and an NPC, he was supposed to be an obstacle for the circus members, but now that he's a part of the gang, he could be continuously being an obstacle to them. But Gooseworks did say that Jax deserves to be in the circus the most out of all the circus members, and maybe she meant this, that Jax is actually an NPC and he has no real consciousness like the others who we think are humans, and this would actually explain a lot about Jax's twisted character. But we'll definitely find out more about him, because he's one of the most interesting characters of the show, and we do know that there will be an episode which will focus on Jax, which Gooseworks said, so maybe that's when we'll see what exactly happened to him and made him the way he is. But I'm hoping that we'll find some good in Jax and that he's actually not an NPC, but hey, it could be true, and if it is true, I called it from the 3-point line. But let me know down in the comments what you think about Jax being an NPC. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and click on this video here.